On May 5, 1945, just days after Hitler committed suicide in his bunker, a medieval fortress in the Austrian Alps became the stage for the most bizarre firefight of the entire Second World War. It sounds like a Hollywood fiction script, but the military records confirm every impossible detail of the event. For the first and only time in the global conflict, American GIs and German Wehrmacht soldiers did not shoot at each other across the battlefield. Instead, they stood shoulder to shoulder, shared ammunition, and fought together as a unified force against a common enemy, the fanatical 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. This event, officially known as the Battle for Castle Itter, was lost in the footnotes of history for decades. The war was practically over, Europe was in total chaos, and this singular act of cooperation was buried under the massive headlines of VE Day, remaining unknown to the general public for nearly 70 years. To understand the immense stakes, you must look at the prisoners inside the castle. Itter was a VIP prison facility for the Third Reich. It held the Golden Pheasants, high-profile French figures, including former prime ministers, generals, and even a famous tennis star, held as bargaining chips by the SS. As the Reich collapsed around them, the regular guards at the castle fled into the night, but the surrounding woods were still infested with wandering SS units who had orders to execute the prisoners rather than let them be liberated by the Allies. The prisoners were trapped, armed with only a few weapons left behind. Inside the castle, the French VIPs prepared to die fighting, but they knew they couldn't hold off a panzer division alone. They desperately needed help. A brave messenger managed to smuggle a frantic plea out to the nearest town, hoping to find any friendly force before the SS launched their assault. The message reached Major Josef Gangl, a German Wehrmacht officer. Gangl was a decorated hero of the brutal Russian front, but had grown deeply disillusioned with the Nazi regime. He commanded a small unit of men and faced a critical choice: surrender to the Americans, flee the country, or fight to save the French. Gangl chose to fight for his conscience, but he knew his handful of Wehrmacht soldiers were not enough to stop the SS. In a twist of fate, he drove his Kubelwagen toward the American lines under a large white flag, not to surrender, but to ask for an unprecedented alliance against his own countrymen. He met Captain John Jack Lee of the US 12th Armored Division. Lee was a cigar-chewing, tough-talking American tank commander who had seen enough war to be skeptical. However, when Gangl explained the imminent massacre at the castle, Lee didn't hesitate. He looked at the German officer and simply said, "Let's go." The convoy that moved toward the castle was surreal to behold. An American Sherman tank named Besotten Jenny led the way, followed immediately by a truckload of Wehrmacht soldiers holding Mauser rifles, riding alongside American infantry. They were a mixed force of enemies, united by a singular mission of rescue. They breached the castle defenses and set up a perimeter just as night fell. For the first time in 6 years of global slaughter, the swastika and the stars and stripes were defending the same barricade. The soldiers shared cigarettes and food. An uneasy but necessary truce formed in the face of death. The atmosphere inside the stone walls was incredibly tense. The French prisoners were confused and terrified to see German soldiers setting up machine gun nests to protect them. Captain Lee took overall command, positioning the Sherman tank at the main gate to block the entrance and act as a pillbox. At dawn on May 5th, the Waffen-SS launched their full attack. They knew the terrain perfectly, and they had the numbers. They opened fire with 80 Itters anti-tank guns and heavy machine guns from the surrounding hills, shattering the morning silence and pinning the defenders down. The Besotten Jenny took a direct hit from an anti-tank round almost immediately. The tank erupted in flames, forcing the radio operator to bail out. The massive gun that was their main deterrent was now a burning wreck blocking the gate, and the defenders lost their only radio link to the outside world. US GIs and Wehrmacht soldiers fired from the castle loopholes side by side, Major Gangl ran through the courtyard under heavy fire, pulling French VIPs out of the line of danger, shouting orders to his men to hold the line against the SS assault. The distinction between American and German had vanished. They were simply defenders. The SS pressed closer, using the dense woods for cover to flank the castle walls. The defenders were running dangerously low on ammunition. The situation was becoming desperate. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a stone trap that was rapidly being chipped away by heavy artillery. Tragedy struck in the heat of the battle. Major Gangl, trying to move former French Prime Minister Paul Reynaud to safety away from a window, was hit by an SS sniper bullet. He died instantly, becoming the only German officer to die in combat defending Americans during the entire war. The irony of his death is staggering. He had survived the horrors of Stalingrad and the retreat from Russia, only to die fighting the Nazis in the final hours of the war, saving the enemies of the Reich. His sacrifice cemented the bond between the men inside the castle walls. By early afternoon, the defenders were down to their last clips of ammunition. The SS were preparing to storm the walls with assault squads, sensing the weakness. Captain Lee prepared his men for hand-to-hand combat in the medieval halls, determined to go down fighting to the last man. Suddenly, the distinct sound of heavy engines roared from the valley floor. It wasn't more SS reinforcements, it was the 142nd Infantry Regiment. A relief column of American tanks and half-tracks smashed through the SS lines, flanked by resistance fighters who had heard the noise. The SS troops, realizing they were now outflanked by a superior force, scattered into the forests. The siege was broken. The Americans at the gate looked up to see the Besotten Jenny still burning, but the flag over the castle, a makeshift French banner, was still flying proud. The liberating US troops were baffled by the scene that greeted them. They found American GIs, French politicians, and German soldiers sitting together, exhausted, covered in dust, surrounded by spent brass casings from different nations. It was a tableau that defied all military regulations. Captain Lee was later decorated with the Distinguished Service Cross for his bravery. Major Gangl was honored as an Austrian national hero for his sacrifice. A street in the nearby town of Wörgl is named after him today, a permanent testament to his choice to do what was right. But for decades, this story was treated as a tall tale or a footnote. It didn't fit the clean binary narrative of good allies versus evil Axis. It was messy, human, and complicated. It showed that even in the darkest times, morality is not determined by the color of a uniform. The battle for Castle Itter challenges our perception of war. It reminds us that beneath the propaganda and the politics, individual soldiers make individual choices. Some chose blind obedience to the end. Others chose honor and humanity, even if it meant fighting their own side. When the world was burning down, a few men decided that saving lives was more important than the flag on their shoulder. They erased the lines drawn by politicians and found a common purpose in a stone castle, proving that courage has no nationality. Historians call it the strangest battle of World War II, but perhaps it was the most hopeful. In the midst of absolute darkness and hatred, sworn enemies looked at each other and chose trust. They proved that redemption is possible even at the very end. The war in Europe officially ended just days later with the German surrender. But at Castle Itter, the peace had already begun, forged in the heat of battle by men who refused to be enemies any longer. They were brothers in arms for one day. Today, the castle stands quiet in the mountains, a monument to a weird and wonderful anomaly. It serves as a reminder that history is rarely black and white. Sometimes the good guys and the bad guys are on the same side of the wall. So the next time you hear about World War II, remember Major Gangl and Captain Lee. Remember the day the Wehrmacht and the US Army fought as one. It is a story that proves humanity can survive even the most inhumane circumstances.